Otto with BBC World News. Our top stories. Kabul's police chief announces his resignation after a series of deadly suicide attacks in the Afghan capital. FARC rebels in Colombia have released a brigadier general and 2 others captured earlier this month. Pope Francis leaves Istanbul, concluding his 3-day visit to Turkey. And back from the brink of extinction, but the humpback whales of the North Pacific now face a different threat.
You're watching a BBC News special. I'm Babita Sharma.
And I'm Philippa Thomas. Our breaking news. Gunmen in Paris attacked the office of a French satirical newspaper, killing 12 people, including its editor-in-chief.
Charlie Hebdo had been repeatedly threatened for publishing caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. The gunmen shouted, "We have avenged the Prophet." The French president rushed to the scene.
Hello and welcome to BBC News. A huge manhunt is underway in France for 3 gunmen after an attack at the Paris offices of the satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo. 12 people have been killed, several others seriously injured in the centre of the French capital. Well, masked gunmen burst into the offices of the newspaper armed with Kalashnikovs and a rocket launcher, opening fire. The paper has been firebombed in the past for printing spoof cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. In today's attack, the editor, Stéphane Charbonnier, and 3 of the best-known cartoonists in France have been killed, as were 2 police officers. Police said the gunmen shouted, "We have avenged the Prophet." With the latest, here's John Brain and a warning: you may find some of the images in John's report disturbing.
Terror in the heart of Paris. Masked and heavily armed, 2 men entered the building in the centre of the French capital late this morning and began firing. By the time they'd stopped, at least 12 people were dead. Many others were seriously injured. The police were quickly on the scene, only to come under attack themselves. Images posted on social media capture the drama. Eyewitnesses have been describing what they saw.
A neighbour called to warn me that there were armed men in the building and that we had to shut all the doors. And several minutes later there were several shots heard in the building from automatic weapons, firing in all directions. It was really upsetting. You'd think it was a war zone.
It's emerged that Stéphane Charbonnier, the editor of Charlie Hebdo, was one of those killed. This was him 3 years ago, after the magazine's premises were firebombed following the publication of a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad. Shortly after this morning's attack, the French president came to issue a message of defiance on behalf of his nation.
The French Interior Minister says France is to stay on its highest state of alert as security forces hunt for the girlfriend of a gunman responsible for a siege at a supermarket in Paris. Well, officials have released more details about Friday's operation, which led to the deaths of 3 gunmen thought to be behind the country's worst terrorist attacks in decades. Security officials believe Mnd Coulibaly had spoken to the men who carried out the attack at the Charlie Hebdo offices more than 500 times on the phone last year. The Kouachi brothers were shot dead by police, though, in a separate siege.
A very warm welcome to our special coverage of dramatic events in Dammartin, a small town north of Paris where hundreds of French police and special forces have converged on an industrial estate where the 2 suspects in Wednesday's attack on the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo appear to be preparing to make their last stand.
Sharif and Sayed Kouachi are believed to be holding 1 hostage inside the offices of a printing business. We're getting many reports from the scene that suggest police have been in contact with the 2 gunmen and they have expressed their readiness for martyrdom.
Now, the French President François Hollande is supervising a massive security operation from the Interior Ministry in Paris. The Interior Minister, Bernard Cazeneuve, has vowed that the threat will be, his word, neutralised. And in another development, police now saying there is a connection between a suspect identified in the shooting of a fatal policewoman in a southern suburb of Paris yesterday and the 2 brothers.
Well, let's take you live now to the shot that you may already be familiar with. We've been seeing it all morning of Dammatin. We know that hundreds of security personnel are there. The town is essentially in lockdown. Residents have been giving us small details of what it's like to be there at the moment. They've been approached by police, told to turn the lights off inside. And we're also hearing that many of the school children in the town have been bused to other locations.
And Lucy, there is one extraordinary story that's just come out of a French radio station. A man has called in. He's a salesman who works in that industrial zone, and he has described how he believes he met the two gunmen this morning. He was very close to the print works. Two men approached him. They were wearing black. They were armed. He assumed to start with they were policemen, but they told him to go away. We do not shoot civilians, as they entered the print works.
Yeah, one of the luckiest people alive, he must be thinking right now, Stephen. Well, it has been a dramatic day, a car chase as well just a few hours ago. With all the very latest for us, here's Richard Lister.
Hello, you're watching BBC World News. I'm Danny Sinha. The latest headlines. French security forces are hunting the girlfriend of a gunman responsible for a siege at a supermarket in Paris. She is described as armed and dangerous. French government ministers are due to meet to plan their next steps. Websites linked to armed Islamist extremists have already warned of further attacks.
Shafanak, let's talk about the cold weather across Europe now, particularly around the Balkans and Turkey. This is where we've had some significant snowfall, and that cold air sunk as far south as northern parts of Egypt. So a significant storm system across this portion of Europe, and all of that freezing air, of course, coming out of Russia. -15 in Moscow on Wednesday, 5 below in Bucharest, and even in parts of Greece, temperatures will be below freezing all day long. Take a look at Athens, +4 Celsius. That is chilly for Greece, and still some snow around across Turkey. But by Wednesday, the worst of the weather will be shifting a little bit further towards the east. Meanwhile, across the other side of Europe, the weather's relatively mild there across Iberia, around 8 degrees in Madrid, Bordeaux at 11 across the border in France. And for the UK, we're expecting some rain and wind here, particularly windy across Scotland. And you can see the freezing conditions here around the eastern side of the Baltic, and not far off freezing there in Oslo and Stockholm as well. Now, for Thursday and Friday, the weather's not looking pretty in London. We'll see periods of rain. It'll be very windy too. Paris is going to feel some of that blustery weather as well. And if you're travelling further afield, a quick look at the weather across Africa for the middle part of the week. In Cape Town, of course, summertime here, so hot and sunny, 32 Celsius. Kinshasa at around 27 Celsius with 1 or 2 showers. Your update.
This is what's been left behind by the devastating combination of record rainfall, swollen rivers and driving wind. In some places, water rose to almost 8 feet. Rescue services have been stretched, trying to reach all those trapped in their homes. Extra lifeboats have been brought in from other areas, and the armed forces have been helping. The flooding has forced many from their homes. In Cockermouth, at least 50 people were airlifted overnight by RAF helicopters. Residents say there has never been flooding on this scale before. The Environment Secretary Hilary Benn is in Cumbria to assess what help is needed.
There was a flood defence scheme put in here in the 1990s that was improved after the 2005 floods. That was meant to protect against a 1 in 100 year flood. What we've seen here, according to some people I've talked to, is more like 1 in 1,000 years. And that shows that even the very best defences can be overtopped when phenomenal amounts of rain fall out of the sky. And that's certainly been the case here in Cumbria.
In Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway also saw flooding, with some areas getting a month's rain in just 36 hours. Conditions are easing, with river levels stabilising, but more rain is forecast for the weekend. Daniel Birch, BBC News.
This is the grisly scene just outside Tripoli Airport. Shattered pieces of the Airbus 330 scattered across a field. It was just approaching the runway when it exploded and disintegrated. Rescue teams are picking through the wreckage to work out the cause. The weather was good and the approach not difficult. But a Libyan newspaper is now reporting the pilot told the control tower there was a technical fault and had requested ambulances and emergency vehicles just before the crash, although this hasn't been confirmed. Almost everyone on board was killed. Miraculously, one young Dutch boy somehow survived the carnage. He's said to be in good condition in hospital. Africair is a Libyan airline operating a modern Airbus fleet. A piece of the plane's tail bearing the company logo sticks out of the debris. Some airports in Morocco are still closed due to volcanic ash, and others in Turkey were affected on Tuesday. All this complicates the many questions over how this disaster happened. The Libyan authorities have now ruled out terrorism and say they've set up a commission of investigation. For now, rescue teams continue to scour the crash site. They've found the flight recorder, which may yet reveal some answers. Emily Buchanan, BBC News.